Hi everybody, it's Tatiana and this is Sweet Tooth, the series by Jeff Lemire. I'm actually only missing volume 1 because I own that and I've already shelved it and I'm not going to get it off my shelf. But this is volumes 2 through 6 of the series, and I'm not going to hold all of these up for the duration of this video because they ain't light. So this story follows the main character, Gus, who is nicknamed Sweet Tooth, through this post-apocalyptic situation where there's this virus that comes and you can't escape it. It's killing off humanity little by little. Humans are dying, but these animal hybrids that have started to be born since the beginning of the virus are the only ones who are immune, and it's humanity's attempt to continue to survive and the effect that that is having on these human-animal hybrids. And the story begins with Sweet Tooth living with his father in the woods, and his father constantly tells him, don't leave the woods. Outside of the woods is danger and evil, so you should never leave the woods. And of course, what do kids do? They do the opposite of what you tell them to do. He ends up leaving the woods and his adventure takes off from there. To put it plainly, I really enjoyed this series. I enjoyed the artwork. I said this when I read volume 1, I really enjoyed the pages. It has this like recycled or fortified newspaper feel of the pages that I really just enjoyed flipping through. That is something that it's a thing. And it made a difference for me as far as the overall process of reading this series, and I was very pleased when I got the books from the library, and one of them is actually, two of them are actually library editions, and they, even with these hardback editions, they had that exact same feel. So yeah, having said that, thoroughly enjoyed this series, but what I did say in my February wrap-up is that I wasn't sure after reading the series if I wanted to purchase the series still. I am still debating about that, and it's not even because I read the series and didn't like it. It's more along the lines of I've read the series and I don't know if I could see myself going back to read it again now that I've finished it. It's like I've read it, I've taken it all in, I really, really enjoyed it, but if I owned it, it literally would just be sitting on my shelf, taking up space. I wouldn't read it again. Why? Because I have issues with viral apocalyptic stories. To this day, Outbreak, the movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. and the dude from Rain Man. What is his name? Okay. To this day, I was like early teens when I saw that movie. I've never watched it in full again. I cannot rewatch that movie. And movies like that just mess with my psyche. And to have this disease, this plague that's killing off humanity, and it doesn't matter what steps you take, it's completely random. It's not even like the Black Plague. You could be sitting beside somebody who has this plague and be completely unaffected. Or you could be around nobody who has it. You could live by yourself, not come into contact with anybody, and still get affected and catch it. And the only difference is nobody's going to know you're dead because you're alone. That's not for me. And so but the plus of this is the fact that I read this at a time when my anxiety was really, really high, and because the major focus is not the plague itself, it's Sweet Tooth's story, and as you learn more about the other humans that he comes into contact with, as well as the other human-animal hybrids that he comes into contact with, it's all of their story and how this whole situation has impacted their lives. It's not about the virus. So that's a good thing. But again, I don't see myself rereading this. The way that this story ends is, because I was concerned when I first started hearing about it, and then I found out that it ends at volume 6, like that is the end of the series, and I was like, well, that's like the quickest wrap up pretty much for any graphic novel series that I've read or heard about, and every volume is under 200 pages. So how did they make that happen? The way that the story ends is good in that there's like very little that you have left to question beyond what happens from here. It's not a plot hole issue or anything, but it's just, you know, what happens from here? How does their story continue? Those are the questions that you're left with. But on the same vein, it's wrapped up a little too cleanly. But what else can you do? You know, so this probably isn't the best review. I say that with every review that I do. But I really enjoyed this series. I would suggest reading this series. However, considering my reasoning, I would not suggest purchasing it. I would suggest borrowing it from the library if you have a friend who's already read this and owns all of the volumes. I would suggest reading it that way first and then making the decision as to whether or not you want to read it again, because this is the only graphic novel series that I have read thus far, that even ones that I've borrowed from the library or borrowed from my friend, this is the only one that I've read thus far that I can truly say I don't know that I would ever read this again. Like, graphic novels that I own, I have reread. I've reread volumes of Lazarus. I've reread volumes of Buffy. I've reread volumes of The Lumberjanes. I reread the last volume of Saga every time a new volume comes out. I don't see myself doing that with this. I wouldn't read it again. That's the best that I can't explain further why, other than the human apocalypse by plague situation. So that's all that I have for that, because I could continue to ramble and not make this any better. I hope that made sense to those of you who are watching this video. If you like to give it a thumbs up, if you want to see more from my channel, hit the subscribe button, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend whenever you see this video. Peace out.